Today I'm going to show you how I make the party dress. I normally don't use this skirt pattern because I think it's too long whenever it's made. I just think it's just way too long. But we're going to do it as it says in the list. I'm going to use this fabric. It's kind of a pink color. I don't know if you can really see it because my desk is very, very red and it kind of messes with the color. And then also I use this tissue paper. It's for like medical tables, so like if you go to the doctor's office, you can usually buy this by the box or by the roll at a medical supply store. And that's what I use. And then these are super sharp scissors. And then this is like really, really tiny rotary blade, very sharp. And handy dandy pencil. And then I also use these, and you can kind of see how they're bent and curved. I use these to turn things inside out, and like the top has the little tiny corners and the edges and things. So whenever I turn things right side out, I like it to be nice and flush, and this helps me turn it right side out. I can go up through the bottom and grab the arm piece and pull it back through, but I can also make sure that this is nice and cornered. Turn that over. I can make sure this is nice and cornered like it's supposed to be, and it makes sure that everything is turned out properly. So I'll show you the rest in a few minutes. I'm going to drop the pattern and cut out the pieces, and I also use fray check. That's really important. I've learned that over the years it is best to use fray check. I'll show you the rest in a minute. So I've got both the tops, the lining and the outer top, as well as the skirt bottom for the dress, all cut out. I wanted to touch base really quick on the lining. All of my dresses and shirts and tops all have this white lining, and for the lining I basically went down to the local thrift store, paid 99 cents, it might have been $1, but whatever, it was probably 99 cents, and bought a white sheet. And so this is a repurposed white sheet. I bought two at the time because I was doing a lot of sewing, not so much anymore. And I'm still using the first one that I bought probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I use the white, that way it doesn't stain the doll. And I'll use it for cuffs and collars also. So I'm going to iron this and fray check it, and we'll check back in a minute. Another thing really quick, I used to use the markers, like the vanishing ink, and the ones that you can, they vanish with like when you wash the fabric, but now I just use pencil. I draw the area that I need to, so I really don't need this right here. That was an accident, just like this one was, but you know, you do need this one here for the sleeves, and obviously for the neck. And then for the neck on this, I modified pretty much all of the patterns that I use, and I changed them so much to make them my own patterns. I use them like a base pattern and modify it how I like it. But for this one, I think that for me the neck of the dress is too tight and restrictive, so I usually make the front of the dress a little bit bigger than the pattern itself, just for that fact. And I'm going to do the top and get the bottom ready, and then I'll show you when we're done, and we'll be doing the gather. So I'm sewing the top, and I just wanted to make note, I am super anal, so when it comes to the neck piece, I usually do that by hand, but I mean like this part. I do this whole part by hand, and I will lift up the foot, and I will turn it as necessary until the whole piece is done, and then I'll do the other side and then the arms. But I just wanted to make that clear because I find that if I am sewing, this will not be rounded. It'll have sections of straight flat pieces, so this entire thing I will sew it with the machine, but I will roll it by hand. So mention, I also, whenever I'm doing anything that's curved, because with the doll clothes the curve is so tight, I also will hand roll this one too. So even though I'm sewing with the machine, I am hand rolling it the entire time. And as you can see, when you do it around the neck, you get the nice, pretty little circle. I also trim off the majority of the excess from around the sewn areas, and I notch the neck. If it's kind of see the notches there. If it's a really tight shoulder, I will notch the arm, but majority of the time I don't. I just don't like a lot of bulk, and so I will trim off the majority of all of it. And again, this is just how I do it. I'm sure everybody has their own way. I am not at all a professional seamstress or anything. This is just how I prefer to do it, and it works for me. And this is all learned by trial and error. So take it with a grain of salt. This is how I do my stuff. Alright, so I have it turned right side out, and I smush it flat on all the seams, and then I go over it again with an iron. And as you can see, the neck lining came out really good. There you go. You can see the neck is really nice. And also whenever I'm cutting the corners, whenever it's still wrong side out, instead of it cutting at a straight line on both sides, when it gets to this point, I will cut a straight across fairly close to the edge. Not close enough that it's going to unravel or anything, but fairly close. That way when I turn it inside out, there's some room for this line and this line to meet in the middle. So this is the first line of the gather that I do. And I make sure there's excess on both sides, obviously. And this is just maybe a 1/4 inch or so from the top. I'm not exactly sure. I don't really measure that much, but it's fairly close to the top. And I'm getting ready to do the second one. Whenever I do my gathering, I do 2 rows, and then I sew in between the 2 rows. So now I've got the second row, and if you can see, compared to the stitch that I used for the hem, this one is quite a bit wider. I have this little tiny Sew Mini Genome, and whenever I'm doing my regular stitching, I use the A, but when I'm doing the gathering, I use C. So what I used to have a brother and a Singer, and I've tried many different sewing machines. This one just does the job for me, and it doesn't take up very much room. And I have a very small apartment, so the less room it can take up, the better. So again, that's what it turns out to look like there. Now, this end here, I will actually take these strings and I'll tie them together in a knot at the end. That way they don't... This is just the way I do it. I tie them together at the end to form a knot, and then I'll start the gather from this end over here. I'll show you that in just a minute. This is how I do the gather. I take the 2 that are closest to me, whether I do it from the back or the front, really doesn't matter. But I take the 2 that are closest to me and I just keep moving it down, and I keep a good tight hold of these, and you just keep moving it down and keep moving it down until you finally have the width that you need. And I usually move it down quite a bit more than needs to be, because I like to have the full option of the entire garment. So I will move it down a little bit smaller than the top itself, and then adjust it accordingly. That way, whenever I pin it, I can pull it back out instead of needing to make it tighter. I can just pull it back out. And I'm almost done here. Just keep moving it down, and you want to keep these strings nice and tight. And you just keep moving it down until you get down there to the end. Now, if I take the top and show you, so here's my top. It's right side out, the insides are sewn, and I iron these flat. I like to iron these flat, and I do, even though it's a little bulky, I like to leave them on there. Anyways, so whenever I take this side, I will pin it right here, and then I'll go across, and I will pin this one right here, and then I even it out, and then I pin it all along here, and I'll show you that in just a minute when I'm done pinning. I also wanted to show you this. This is what I do also. After I get the two sides pinned down, I'll see, you know, I have this much or whatever. And then a lot of times I won't have very much on this side because I had to stretch it back out to pin it over here. So I'll take a little needle, a little pin like this, and I'll adjust it. And you can adjust, because there's so much room, you just adjust it however you need to. So even on this side, I need it a little bit more. I need a little bit more on this side. So you just adjust it however you need it. And then whenever I think that I've adjusted it enough, then I'll go ahead and pin the rest of it. So I am done pinning, and I literally do pin it a lot. This is probably, I think I counted 14 or 15 pins, probably 14. Now if you look on here, these are the two lines. This looks way weird because it's all roughly, but these two lines, this is where I'm going to sew, is right along there, right in that little area. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you what I do next. Okay, so now the pins are out, and what I do is I take it and I fold it under the top portion. So like here's the sleeve, and I fold it up and I pinch it, and as I'm going, because whenever you take the pins out you'll have little holes from the sewing and from the pins, and so I will just take it and I'll pinch these two sections together, and I'll just give it a little tug and I'll work it at the same time, and that helps the holes, it helps the fabric fill the holes back in. So I will pinch and hold all the way around. I've already done it, so I don't have to do it as much now. And then I will iron this again. I will iron just the top portion, not the bottom portion. You don't want these to be flat. So I will iron this top portion, and then I will go over and sew it again, and I will sew it really, really close to the seam. And I'll show you that in a minute when I'm done sewing it, and then I will sew this back portion. And normally, if this was a dress that I was going to make for sale, I wouldn't be using white with pink. I just made it mostly so that you can see the differences in the sewing lengths. And since this is more like a practice dress, not a serious dress that I would sell, this is not a dress that I would sell, just because I'm not very fond of the pattern itself. But I have sold it in the far distant past. So I will get back to you in a minute after I've sewn this whole section, and because I like it looking a little cleaner than it does, and I'll show you that in just a minute. So this is what it looks like when I'm done. So this isn't as good as, like I said before, this isn't a dress that I would sell, so I wasn't as careful as I should have been. But you can see how close it is to the waistline of the two, and that's how I make it look a little bit cleaner to me. And then on the bottom, whenever I'm done sewing it together, I like to iron it flat, and I like to go over, flatten it out, and sew it across. That way whenever the dress is on, you don't have this little weird poof thing in the back that's trying to bend like that or anything like that. It'll be nice and straight because the stitch goes straight across. And if I actually had a pink in this color, I don't really like this fabric. It's really kind of hard and it's not as soft as I would like it to be. That's why I still have it. It's one of the first fabrics I bought back in 1999 probably. I've had it forever, but I can't part with it for some reason. And if I've just had it and I used it for a whole bunch of different other things, pillows and things, and this was like scrap fabric that I had from a long time ago. And so I'll show you in a minute. I'll put it on Emily. I'm not going to put snaps or anything on the back because I'm not going to keep this. So I will put it on Emily and we'll see how it fits. You have it. Dress is finished. Emily is wearing it. Not too keen about it though, but that's okay. Hope you like the video.